Hello, and welcome to this training video on prompting. In this training, we will be providing tips for teaching your student, particularly in terms of how they are prompted or guided through tasks. So who are we?
I'm Sarah Strata. I'm assistant principal at Sumner Danbury and a former teacher in our OI program.
I am Jen Passwater. I teach in the orthopedic impairment programs at both El Roble Intermediate and Claremont High School.
And I am Kirsty Stevens. I am a speech-language pathologist at Danbury Elementary School.
So we just want to begin with this mantra, if you will. Be patient and give yourself grace. We are finding ourselves in uncharted territory, and you are likely finding yourself wearing many more hats than you're used to. So when you're working with your student, shifting your expectations, considering our changed environments, can help both you and your student. So this training is intended to give you some terminology and best practices to develop how you are already working with your student.
This training will go over techniques for working with your student on both maintaining and improving their skills. This is applicable with all tasks and ability levels, including communication. Like we said, we just want to share some theory and best practices for things that you're already doing naturally. This may just help broaden your understanding of how we all learn. Prompting is such a general concept that it's applicable to both maintaining and learning new skills. It really is relevant to all types of learning. Children and adults, with or without disabilities, all learn through different levels of prompting. Everything that anyone ever has learned or has gotten into our brains through a prompt of some sort.
So sorry, it's a little bit ahead of the slide. So what do we mean by prompting? A technical definition of prompting is instructions, gestures, demonstrations, touches, or other things that we arrange or do to increase the likelihood that children will make correct responses. In other words, what we are doing with, around, and to our students to support them in completing a task. And prompting is categorized by how much independence the individual has in the skill. Let's look at the different types of prompting.
This visual guide is called a prompt hierarchy. It describes the 6 general types of prompting from most to least independent. A student receiving just a visual prompt is the most independent, where a student receiving a full physical prompt comparatively has the least independence. A visual prompt includes showing a picture or video, writing out directions, or arranging items for proximity, such as putting the toothpaste next to the toothbrush. A verbal prompt is given after the initial instruction, like repeating the directions, or saying part of the answer or breaking down the directions verbally.
A gestural prompt is an indication from another person, such as pointing, nodding, or a thumbs up. Modeling is performing the target skill first or showing the student what to do. A partial physical prompt is lightly guiding, tapping, or nudging the student to perform the task. And on the most involved end of the spectrum, we have full physical prompting, which is hand over hand or physically assisting the student beyond a partial physical prompt.
Now let's go through some concepts before we see some video examples. So the concept of least to most prompting involves moving through the prompt hierarchy, starting at a more independent prompt and moving to more involved prompting only if the individual does not first succeed. This fits with the mindset of presuming competence, meaning that you approach the student with the directions as if they were independent at the task, and then building up or scaffolding their support only as needed. Now, this gives the student more opportunities for independence and also helps avoid prompt dependence. And prompt dependence is when a student will not do a task unless they are prompted, when they otherwise could do the task independently. In other words, they have learned that it is easier for them to quote unquote do a task if someone else does it for them. In some tasks, such as a physically involved skill, most to least prompting may be appropriate for your student.
Right. Wait time is another important piece to consider when prompting students. We all need different amounts of time to process things, and before moving on to a more involved prompt, you should make sure that you're giving the individual enough time to succeed. This may be much longer than what you're used to waiting or what you're even comfortable with, but if you're consistent, you may be surprised. Research has demonstrated that when a communication partner provides wait time, an AAC user is more likely to claim their turn and respond with more words. One study suggested that providing wait time of up to 45 seconds supports users to claim more conversational turns and use more words. One of my favorite quotes is, "There is power in the perfect pause." And I myself have found that I often need to count in my head to make sure I'm giving my communication partner, my student, enough time. A few ideas on how to do this include practice being a good listener. Look at your student in the eye and focus on them and your conversation. Ask lots of open-ended questions. Do you ask all your friends just yes or no questions? Of course not. That would be really boring. Wait for them to talk. Don't say a word and keep looking at them. Show how interested you are. Again, count to 5 in your head, 10 in your head. Do 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. It feels like a long time, but it's okay.
Consistency is another key concept, and we all benefit from consistency in our lives, and our students are really no different. When our students know what to expect when interacting with different people in different places, they can be more independent and successful. Being consistent also helps when tracking how a student is doing with a particular skill. And you may see this type of terminology in your student's IEP, where the student skills are being described, tracked, and monitored.
So here are some general practices to keep in mind when working with your student. You'll want to ask yourself, is this task meaningful? Meaning, is it appropriate and actually beneficial to them? I mean, you can hand over hand solve a complex calculus problem for me, but how much was I actually engaging in that task? You'll want to ask yourself, are other accommodations and supports in place? You'll want to ensure that any needed visual enhancements, for example, or assistive technology are applied so your student can be successful. You'll ask yourself, which prerequisite skills does the student have? For example, if you're asking them to sort colors, can they differentiate and match colors before you're asking them to do the next step? You want to be sure to meet your students where they're at. Be realistic with your expectations while still presuming competence. If your student is blind, a gestural prompt may not be particularly helpful, but just because your student isn't yet doing a skill doesn't mean that you can't expose them to new skills and build the foundation for their skills to grow in the future. You'll also want to keep in mind the range within prompting levels. So even within each level of prompting, the intensity can be different, such as how detailed a verbal prompt is, how big a gestural prompt is, or where you touch them for a physical prompt. And mostly, you want to maintain integrity, especially with physical prompting. Tell the individual how you are going to help them before you begin and gain consent where appropriate. Put yourself in their shoes and think about how you would like to be guided through a task. Now let's see some video examples. Please keep some things in mind as we view these examples. Every individual is unique, and we made these videos with our own children. Each child or student will likely require different wait times and degrees of prompting, depending on their needs and abilities. Note, as we move through the continuum of more prompting, the adult still begins with a lighter prompt before moving onto a more physical prompt.
Here's an example of providing your child or your student with the least level of support by simply providing a visual prompt. In this case, the visual prompt is simply the bowl of colored bears. Are you ready to do some sorting today?
Yes.
All right. Sort your bears. Great job doing your sorting. This is an example of providing your child or your student a verbal prompt. A verbal prompt is any verbal direction given after the initial direction. And you'll notice that there's a wait time between the initial direction and then the verbal prompt. Are you ready to do some sorting today?
Yes.
All right. Sort your bears. Remember, sort your bears. Perfect. Great job. Here's an example of providing your child or your student with a gestural prompt. A gestural prompt may be pointing or nodding. I'm going to be combining a verbal and a gestural prompt together. And again, notice the wait time in between the prompts after the initial instruction. Are you ready to sort?
Yes.
Okay. We have some colored bears here. Sort your bears. Sort your bears. Great job. Here's an example of providing a modeling prompt for your child or student. Modeling is performing the target skill first or showing the student or child what to do. And in this example, I will include a verbal, a gestural, and a modeling prompt. And again, notice the wait time between the instruction and each of the prompts. Are you ready to do some sorting?
Yes.
All right. Sort your bears. Can you sort your bears? All right, here's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be putting the blue bears together. We're sorting. And we're going to be putting the yellow bears together. We're sorting. Can you sort the bears? Great job. Here's an example of providing your child or your student with a partial physical prompt. A partial physical prompt may be lightly guiding, tapping, or nudging your student to perform the task. And in this example, I will include the verbal, gestural, the modeling prompt, and then move on to the partial physical prompt. And again, notice the wait time between the instruction and each of the prompts. Are you ready to sort today?
Yes.
Sort your bears. Remember to sort your bears. Let's sort. Okay, I'll do it with you. You ready? We are going to be putting blue bears together. We are sorting bears. And then yellow bears together. We are sorting bears. Now it's your turn to sort your bears. Let's sort. Great job sorting. Awesome. Here's an example of providing your child or your student with a full physical prompt. A full physical prompt may be hand over hand, it may be hand under hand, or physically assisting the student past a partial physical prompt. For this example, we're going to begin at the modeling level of prompting. And remember that when providing a full physical prompt, to continue to describe the task you are completing and to always praise the child or student for completing their work. We're going to do some sorting today. We're going to put our blue bears together. We are sorting our bears. We're going to sort yellow bears. Put the bears together. Now it's your turn. Let's sort our bears. Let's do it together. Let's sort our red bears. Good job. We're sorting. Let's sort our green bears. Great job sorting with me today.
So in bringing this all together, remember to give yourself and your student grace and patience. You were already doing so much of this naturally. We just want to give you some terminology and best practices to help you along the way. You can see that the way we prompt each other is all about finding balance and noticing that the small changes in the short term lead to bigger changes in the long run. As with anything else, your student's school team is here to support you. Reach out to a teacher or case manager if you would like more individualized guidance. Thank you so much for watching this training video. We hope it will be helpful. Take care, everybody.